I spent 15 years building a life my brother could never touch, and when he finally discovered what I'd become, he showed up with our parents demanding I fix the mess they made of his existence. But I refused, and now they're camped outside my office like I owe them something for surviving their neglect. I don't carry many regrets. Honestly, I try not to dwell on the past except for this one thing that keeps me awake at 3 a.m., and I've hidden it from everyone who matters for over a decade. I always knew the truth would surface eventually, but I never imagined it would detonate right in the middle of my gallery opening. Buckle up, because this gets complicated fast. I'm 34M, and I basically became invisible at age 7. That's when Dad called me downstairs at midnight, saying we needed to drive to the hospital right now because something was wrong with Mom. She'd fallen, you see, and my brother Marcus had been there when it happened. He was only 4. The next several days turned into a nightmare of sterile hallways and whispered phone calls. Marcus wouldn't stop crying. He screamed whenever anyone tried to separate him from Mom, clutching her hospital gown with his tiny fists. I tried to hug him once, but Dad pushed me away hard enough that I stumbled. That was the first moment I understood something fundamental had shifted between me and everyone else. When Mom finally came home, everything changed. Our house became this therapy center overnight. Dad obsessed over Marcus's emotional state, child psychologist every Tuesday, trauma specialists on Thursdays, constant monitoring. The sound of hushed professional voices still triggers my anxiety even now. And look, maybe this could have been manageable. But then came the part that really destroyed me. Whenever I showed any normal kid behavior, laughing too loud, playing too rough, I got sent immediately to either Uncle Pete's or Grandpa Williams' place. At first, my 7-year-old brain thought it was kind of exciting. Uncle Pete had this massive TV and would let me stay up late, while Grandpa William taught me about his coin collection. Eventually, though, I understood what was happening. It reached the point where I'd sit perfectly still during dinner, barely breathing, just to avoid being labeled disruptive. But regardless, all their energy went to Marcus. So I tried earning approval differently. I became the perfect son, straight A's, never complained, winning every spelling bee. I even learned to play 3 instruments simultaneously. And Dad's response was just telling me to practice in the garage because the noise might trigger Marcus's anxiety. But the moment that really gutted me happened when I was 12. I'd worked for months training for the regional track championship, obsessively running every morning. Marcus coincidentally had a therapy breakthrough scheduled the same day as my race. Guess who ran alone while everyone else had families cheering? Meanwhile, 3 days later, the entire extended family, including people who lived 5 states away, showed up for Marcus's elementary school art show, where he displayed one crayon drawing. Marcus noticed this pattern, and he weaponized it brilliantly. By age 9, he'd recovered from any legitimate trauma, but naturally, that didn't stop the performance. Burst into tears, got whatever he wanted, claimed he felt unsafe. Someone else, guess who got blamed? Needed extra time on homework? Dad would email teachers demanding accommodations. I disappeared deeper into my bedroom, surrounding myself with books about architecture and urban design. My room became my fortress, mainly because Marcus said my sandalwood incense gave him headaches, so it remained the single space he avoided. Then something shifted. Instead of dreading being sent away, I started welcoming it. I didn't care anymore whether it was my behavior or his episodes, because either way, I'd end up at Grandpa Williams, who actually remembered my name or asked what I was learning. He filled the father-shaped hole in my life. He's the one who introduced me to modern architecture. Meanwhile, the only time my parents acknowledged my existence was to spout nonsense like, Marcus just requires more support because of his traumatic experience. Ethan's always been so self-sufficient. Ethan knows his brother has special circumstances. But no, I absolutely did not know. I was a child trying to understand why being emotionally stable made me less worthy of attention. But whatever, at least it taught me independence. When nobody reviews your homework or acknowledges your victories, you discover quickly how to become your own advocate. But here's what happens when you're invisible. Nobody monitors your choices or your potential, so you can do absolutely anything you want. Saying I exploited this opportunity would be a massive understatement. Within 18 months, I altered my entire trajectory permanently. My parents were stunned, and Marcus finally faced consequences. Even today, I share my story openly because I'm incredibly proud of what I accomplished. I'd tell you everything right now, but there's not enough space in this brief section. Click the link or visit my channel to hear it. I don't carry many regrets. Honestly, I try not to dwell on the past except for this one thing that keeps me awake at 3 a.m. And I've hidden it from everyone who matters for over a decade. I always knew the truth would surface eventually, but I never imagined it would detonate right in the middle of my gallery opening. Buckle up, because this gets complicated fast. I'm 34M, and I basically became invisible at age 7. That's when Dad called me downstairs at midnight, saying we needed to drive to the hospital right now because something was wrong with Mom. She'd fallen, you see, and my brother Marcus had been there when it happened. He was only 4. The next several days turned into a nightmare of sterile hallways and whispered phone calls. Marcus wouldn't stop crying. He screamed whenever anyone tried to separate him from Mom, clutching her hospital gown with his tiny fists. I tried to hug him once, but Dad pushed me away hard enough that I stumbled. That was the first moment I understood something fundamental had shifted between me and everyone else. When Mom finally came home, everything changed. Our house became this therapy center overnight. Dad obsessed over Marcus's emotional state, child psychologist every Tuesday, trauma specialist on Thursdays, constant monitoring. The sound of hushed professional voices still triggers my anxiety even now. And look, maybe this could have been manageable, but then came the part that really destroyed me. Whenever I showed any normal kid behavior, laughing too loud, playing too rough, I got sent immediately to either Uncle Pete's or Grandpa Williams' place. At first, my 7-year-old brain thought it was kind of exciting. Uncle Pete had this massive TV and would let me stay up late, while Grandpa William taught me about his coin collection. Eventually, though, I understood what was happening. It reached the point where I'd sit perfectly still during dinner, barely breathing, just to avoid being labeled disruptive. But regardless, all their energy went to Marcus, so I tried earning approval differently. I became the perfect son, straight A's, never complained, winning every spelling bee. I even learned to play 3 instruments simultaneously, and Dad's response was just telling me to practice in the garage because the noise might trigger Marcus's anxiety. But the moment that really gutted me happened when I was 12. I'd worked for months training for the regional track championship, obsessively running every morning. Marcus coincidentally had a therapy breakthrough scheduled the same day as my race. Guess who ran alone while everyone else had families cheering? Meanwhile, 3 days later, the entire extended family, including people who lived 5 states away, showed up for Marcus's elementary school art show, where he displayed one crayon drawing. Marcus noticed this pattern, and he weaponized it brilliantly. By age 9, he'd recovered from any legitimate trauma, but naturally, that didn't stop the performance. Burst into tears, got whatever he wanted. Claim he felt unsafe? Someone else, guess who got blamed? Needed extra time on homework? Dad would email teachers demanding accommodations. I disappeared deeper into my bedroom, surrounding myself with books about architecture and urban design. My room became my fortress, mainly because Marcus said my sandalwood incense gave him headaches, so it remained the single space he avoided. Then something shifted. Instead of dreading being sent away, I started welcoming it. I didn't care anymore whether it was my behavior or his episodes, because either way I'd end up at Grandpa Williams, who actually remembered my name or asked what I was learning. He filled the father-shaped hole in my life. He's the one who introduced me to modern architecture. Meanwhile, the only time my parents acknowledged my existence was to spout nonsense like, Marcus just requires more support because of his traumatic experience. Ethan's always been so self-sufficient. Ethan knows his brother has special circumstances. But no, I absolutely did not know. I was a child trying to understand why being emotionally stable made me less worthy of attention. But whatever, at least it taught me independence. When nobody reviews your homework or acknowledges your victories, you discover quickly how to become your own advocate. But here's what happens when you're invisible. Nobody monitors your choices or your potential, so you can do absolutely anything you want. Saying I exploited this opportunity would be a massive understatement. Within 18 months, I altered my entire trajectory permanently. My parents were stunned, and Marcus finally faced consequences. Even today, I share my story openly because I'm incredibly proud of what I accomplished. I signed up for every workshop that didn't conflict with my landscaping job at Henderson's nursery, thanks to Rita, the manager who remembered my birthday when my own parents didn't. Architecture club? Check. Student government vice president? Check. Founder of the design collective? Check. Architecture club became my salvation. There's something incredibly powerful about creating spaces while maintaining complete creative control. It also taught me project management, which I never realized would matter tremendously later. I won regional competitions twice. My parents missed both ceremonies because Marcus had anxiety about an upcoming field trip. He was on the backup list and never even went. Junior year is when everything accelerated. I took the ACT and scored a perfect 36. Not pretty good perfect. I mean perfect 36. Do you know how many people achieved that? Less than 0.5%. I remember staring at the results on my phone for maybe half an hour, convinced there'd been a scoring error. I rushed home to tell my parents. Stupid, I know. Mom was in the living room helping Marcus with his algebra homework. The conversation went something like, "Mom, look, I got a perfect ACT score." "That's wonderful, honey, but can you give us some space? Marcus is really struggling with these equations." "Yeah, some of us aren't naturally smart like you, Ethan. Must be nice." "Marcus, sweetie, don't compare yourself. Everyone has different strengths. I still have that score report somewhere, buried in a box, never made it to the fridge. But Marcus's C+ on a history quiz? That got framed, literally framed, with a "We Believe in You" caption. The college application process was surreal. I applied to 12 schools without mentioning it to anyone. Wrote all my own essays, secured my own recommendation letters, navigated all the financial aid paperwork independently. My counselor, Mr. Harrison, was genuinely helpful. He stayed late multiple times to review applications with me. My parents were too overwhelmed with Marcus's needs to assist with the FAFSA, so I filled it out myself in the school library. Then the acceptances started arriving. MIT, Stanford, UC Berkeley, Cornell, each one accompanied by a scholarship package. I stored them all in a locked drawer beneath my bed, knowing exactly what would happen if Marcus discovered them. He'd suddenly develop academic anxiety, or worse. The day I received my full ride offer from MIT, Marcus made the varsity soccer team. Guess which achievement was celebrated with a family dinner? Hint, I ate leftover Chinese food in my room while they went to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. But you know what? That scholarship was my escape hatch. Full tuition, housing, meal plan covered, plus a research stipend. I could finally leave that house where I was either a ghost or an inconvenience. The day I got my acceptance packet, I went to my favorite spot in the city library, a 4th floor alcove overlooking the river, and cried for probably 90 minutes. Not sad tears, liberation tears. When I told my parents at dinner that I was attending MIT, they were concerned. "Dad, MIT? But that's across the country. What if Marcus needs you?" "Mom, I hope you're not expecting financial help. Marcus's therapy sessions are extremely expensive." Marcus actually tearing up. "Oh my God, I finally get your room. I need more space for my gaming setup." I worked triple shifts at Henderson's nursery that summer to build savings. Rita, bless her soul, always ensured I received generous tips and let me take home leftover plants at week's end. She also taught me something invaluable: how to recognize authentic people in a world saturated with pretenders. "Kid," she told me while repotting succulents, "in nurseries and in life, the ones making the most noise usually have the shallowest roots." Move-in day at MIT, my parents couldn't attend because Surprise Marcus had a soccer tournament. Grandpa William drove me instead, helped arrange my dorm room, and handed me an envelope containing $800. "Your grandmother wanted you to have this before she passed," he told me, voice thick. "She was so incredibly proud of you." Later, I learned Grandma had been saving that money from her pension for nearly 2 years. That first night in my dorm room, I made myself a promise. I was going to construct such an extraordinary life that being overlooked would become impossible. Not from revenge, not to prove anything to my family, but for that 7-year-old boy who used to get banished to relatives' houses for laughing too loudly. College disappeared in a whirlwind of late nights, instant ramen, and glorious freedom. I joined the Urban Design Collective, a perfect excuse to spend hours discussing architectural theory and city planning with people who actually valued my input. I even organized a small exhibition in our student center featuring sustainable housing models. Nobody from my family attended, naturally, but it marked a turning point for me. For the first time, other people recognized value in the knowledge I'd accumulated. I graduated summa cum laude from MIT. Not that my parents noticed, they were too busy helping Marcus transfer to his fourth college in 3 years. But here's where the narrative takes an unexpected turn. I landed an entry-level position at Morrison and Webb architecture firm in Boston. I won't use the real name for obvious reasons, but if you're in the industry, you probably know who I mean. A legitimate, high-caliber firm. Lots of prestigious clients. That kind of place. I started in their residential division, drafting floor plans for wealthy clients' vacation homes. Not exactly glamorous, but it paid my bills. My first few months were fairly routine, drawing countless kitchen layouts, designing bathroom configurations, etc. Then came the Fitzgerald project. Mr. Fitzgerald was an aging tech entrepreneur who'd purchased a historic brownstone, wanting to modernize it while preserving architectural integrity. This is where those hours at Grandpa Williams paid off. I'm reviewing the building's original blueprints when something catches my attention. There's an inconsistency in the wall measurements, a space that shouldn't exist according to the current layout. The structural documentation seemed off for 1920s construction. I think I spent my entire lunch break that day researching historic Boston building codes and architectural practices. I ended up staying late at the office to access the firm's subscription to various architectural archives. The more I investigated, the more convinced I became that this wasn't just a measurement error. This brownstone had hidden features, likely a sealed room from Prohibition era. Problem was, I was the junior architect. Nobody would believe me if I claimed we'd discovered something historically significant. So I did what Architecture Club taught me. I prepared my case meticulously. I spent 3 weeks during lunch breaks and evenings learning everything possible about Prohibition era architecture and historic preservation. I even used some of my pathetic savings to pay for an online course in architectural history. Finally, I gathered courage to approach my boss, Miss Chen. I brought the whole presentation, comparative blueprints, historical documentation, structural analysis, the works. The conversation went something like, "Miss Chen, I think we might have something historically significant in the Fitzgerald building." Chen barely glancing up from her tablet. "Ethan, we've already completed the initial assessment." "I know, but look at these wall measurements. They match perfectly with documented Prohibition-era hidden room construction techniques." Chen finally paying attention. "Where did you learn all this?" I did some research. Long story short, the sealed room existed. Behind a false wall, we discovered an intact 1920s speakeasy, complete with original fixtures. The Historical Society valued it at $180,000 for preservation purposes, and Mr. Fitzgerald was thrilled to incorporate it into his renovation. But here's the real kicker. Chen started trusting me after that. She began assigning me other projects to investigate. Suddenly, my useless hobby of studying architectural history had actual value. I threw myself into learning everything about historic architecture and adaptive reuse. I took every online course I could afford. I spent weekends at estate sales studying building materials. I even started a detailed notebook documenting different construction techniques across eras. My apartment looked like an architectural historian's fever dream, with walls covered in photocopies of historic blueprints and building permits. The firm started seeing results. I was identifying important structural elements others had overlooked, developing relationships with preservation societies, understanding the market. My project bonuses grew larger. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving, I was accumulating wealth. My family remained remarkably disinterested. At Sunday dinners, which I still attended like a masochist, the conversation went, "Mom, Ethan's still at that drafting job, right? Architecture firm?" And yes, actually, I just completed a historic preservation project for Marcus, interrupting. "Oh my God. Speaking of jobs, you guys have to hear about this promotion I almost got at the call center." But I didn't care anymore. For once in my life, I had discovered something entirely mine, something I was genuinely excellent at, something that had nothing to do with being Marcus's brother or the family afterthought. Then came the Whitmore collection. This was about 3 years into working at the firm. Massive project, historic mansion conversion, lots of industry buzz. I was part of the team assessing their property for adaptive reuse, and that's when I spotted it a structural element everyone else had dismissed as standard Victorian construction. I spent 4 days researching it, barely sleeping. It turned out to be an intact example of a famous architect's experimental design technique, previously thought to be only theoretical. When documented and preserved properly, it added $340,000 to the property's value. Chen called me into her office. I thought I was getting promoted. Instead, she said something that completely altered everything. Ethan, you're wasting your potential here. You should be running your own architectural consultation practice. At first, I dismissed it. Me? Start a business? With what capital? But the idea took root. I started taking small freelance consulting jobs on the side. Word spread that I had an incredible eye for hidden architectural value. Private developers began reaching out directly. One night, I was sitting in my modest apartment, surrounded by architectural reference books and assessment tools I had slowly accumulated when it hit me. This was something I could actually do. I could build something of my own. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I took out a massive loan against my car. I emptied my savings account. I rented a tiny office space in a questionable part of town. People thought I was insane. Maybe I was. I transformed a storage unit above a pho restaurant that was roughly the size of a large closet. The rent was cheap because it perpetually smelled like star anise, and the Wi-Fi only functioned if you positioned yourself in the corner near the fire escape. But it was mine. The first few months were terrifying, and by terrifying, I mean I'd wake up at 5 a.m. in cold sweats, calculating how many months until bankruptcy. Loan payments felt like a noose tightening around my neck. My office furniture consisted of a folding table from Target and a chair I literally discovered on the curb. Don't worry, I sanitized it obsessively. But in the world of high-end architecture and historic preservation, reputation and connections are everything. And my time at the firm had given me both. I started small, doing consultation work for local developers. My fees were lower than the big firms, but my attention to detail was becoming known. Word spread. 6 months in, a breakthrough happened. A developer I'd worked with at the firm asked about assessing a collection of historic row houses before demolition. The owner wanted verification before proceeding. It turned out to be a massive project with buildings from 4 different architectural periods. I worked on it for 3 weeks straight, barely sleeping, documenting everything. I discovered 3 extremely rare examples of early adaptive reuse that had been completely misidentified as later reconstructions. The owner was so impressed with my detailed analysis that she not only paid my fee but offered me a 15% commission when the property sold for historic preservation. That commission? $124,000. More money than I'd earned in the previous 3 years combined. Suddenly, my phone was ringing constantly. Private developers hearing about my talent for spotting overlooked architectural value. Real estate lawyers seeking opinions on historic properties. Even my old firm started sending me consultation work. I'm pretty sure Chen was secretly helping spread the word. Thanks, boss. By year 2, I'd hired my first employee, Jordan, a recent architecture graduate who reminded me way too much of myself at that age. Incredibly talented, but overlooked because he was soft-spoken. He's now my head of historic preservation and worth his weight in platinum. The business grew faster than I could have imagined. Moved to a proper office downtown. Goodbye, fuss-mel. Built a team of specialists. Developed a reputation for discovering lost architectural significance. You wouldn't believe how many important historic buildings get misidentified as ordinary structures in people's portfolios. Around this time, I also had my first real opportunity to help Grandpa William. He called me one evening, clearly uncomfortable about asking for assistance. His roof needed replacement, a $22,000 expense he couldn't manage on his retirement income. I transferred the money to his account that night and told him it was an advance payment for architectural consulting services. We both knew it was fiction, but it preserved his dignity while allowing me to help the one person who'd always been there. But success brought its own complications. The bigger we grew, the harder it became to keep it hidden from my family. They still thought I worked at that little drafting job. Marcus would make these condescending comments during family dinners. Marcus, Ethan, I have some old house plans I was going to throw out. Maybe your little office would want them? Me, having just consulted on a $2.8 million historic preservation project that morning? Sure, I'll take a look. Mom still introduces me to everyone as my other son. He works with building plans or something. Meanwhile, I've been quoted in Architectural Digest, thankfully under my company name, and we just opened our third office. The weird part? Keeping the secret became almost enjoyable, like this private joke with myself. I'd sit at Sunday dinner in my deliberately chosen Target clearance outfit, actually Tom Ford, listening to Marcus discuss his entry-level marketing job, knowing I'd just closed a deal worth more than his annual salary. I even started playing little games with myself, like wearing authentic vintage architectural drafting tools as accessories to family gatherings to see if anyone would notice. They never did. Marcus once spent 30 minutes showing off his expensive $400 smartwatch. I was wearing a vintage Patek Philippe worth more than his car. By year 6, we'd established offices in Boston, New York, and Chicago. I spent more time on airplanes than in my own bed. We'd built a reputation for discretion. Turns out, many wealthy developers want their properties assessed without the rest of the world knowing. I met a real estate magnate's widow once who arrived after hours through the service entrance, terrified that her stepchildren would discover she was having the family properties appraised before making changes to her estate plan. I've assessed buildings for celebrities who didn't want the press knowing about their real estate investments. I've even been flown to foreign countries on private jets to verify historic properties before major sales, all while my family thought I was working at some local drafting office. The money was insane. Like, we need to hire a team of financial planners, insane. Still, I maintained a relatively modest lifestyle. I bought a nice, but not flashy house in a good neighborhood. I drove a high-end, but not obvious car. The only place I truly splurged? My home office. State-of-the-art assessment equipment. The best security system money could buy. A custom-built archive that would make the Library of Congress jealous. The irony? They thought I was being frugal to help them. Mom would say things like, "It's so sweet of Ethan to help out. He must be eating nothing but ramen to manage it." Meanwhile, I just completed a consultation that earned me a commission larger than their mortgage. You know what's strange about success? The more you achieve, the harder it becomes to explain to people who've always seen you as less than. It's like trying to describe color to someone who's only seen in black and white. They lack the framework. By this point, my company was thriving. We cornered the historic architectural consultation market in the Northeast, and our reputation was solid gold. Pun intended, but every Sunday I'd drive to my parents' house for dinner, playing Ethan the modest drafting employee. The cognitive dissonance was becoming absurd. I'd spend my mornings on conference calls with Dubai developers, my afternoons assessing million-dollar properties, and my evenings at my parents' house in carefully selected ordinary clothes, eating Mom's overcooked meatloaf, while Marcus dominated the conversation with stories of his latest marketing triumph. Usually something like organizing office supplies without being asked. One Sunday stands out particularly vividly. I had just completed a massive deal assessing a historically significant building that had been sitting vacant for 20 years. The commission alone, 7 figures. I drove straight from the meeting to my parents' place, still buzzing from the successful project. "Mom, Ethan, honey, is everything okay? Your clothes are looking a bit worn." Oh, trying to save money. Wearing a $3,400 cashmere sweater I'd purposely chosen for its understated appearance. Well, if you'd gotten a real career instead of playing with old buildings, Dad, Marcus, be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you. I nearly choked on my meatloaf, trying not to laugh. The anonymous transfer started around this time. Monthly payments to my parents' account. Uncle Pete told me they were struggling to pay Marcus's student loans and credit card bills. Mom casually mentioned they might have to downsize the house. I couldn't let that happen. Despite everything, it was still the home I grew up in. So I started an anonymous monthly transfer of $6,000 to their account. When questioned, I claimed I was contributing $1,200 by eating rice and beans. They assumed the rest came from Uncle Pete or other relatives. Marcus, naturally, took credit for inspiring family members to help. The money helped, but it also had unintended consequences. My parents began treating me with this bizarre mixture of pity and patronizing affection. like I was some noble poverty case, sacrificing everything to support the family. Meanwhile, Marcus's spending became more extravagant. He'd arrive for dinner with new designer clothes, claiming they were clearance finds. They weren't. I can spot authentic Gucci from 30 paces. He started taking lavish vacations and posting on Instagram about his number-blessed life. I'm pretty sure he was using my support money for shopping sprees, but I kept quiet. The irony was just too delicious. Then came the graduate school drama. Marcus announced he wanted to return to school for his MBA, another private university, naturally. Only the best for the golden child. Dad called me in tears, explaining how they couldn't afford it. Maybe Marcus could look at state schools? They have excellent programs. Oh, son, you don't understand. Your brother needs to maintain certain standards. But speaking of helping, could you increase your monthly contribution for a few years? I increased it to $8,500 per month. My accounts didn't even register the difference. But watching them praise Marcus for taking initiative with his education, while assuming I was living on ramen to help out, that stung a little. The real kicker? I was a guest lecturer at the same business school Marcus wanted to attend. My family didn't know that. The dean personally invited me to give a seminar on architectural valuation and historic preservation business models. I had to fabricate an excuse for why I couldn't attend Sunday dinner that week. During that lecture, I kept wondering what would happen if Marcus walked in. Would he recognize me? Would he tell my parents? The fear of exposure still haunted me, even as I stood there talking confidently to a room full of MBA students about market analysis for historic properties. The cognitive dissonance was getting harder to manage. My own accomplishment started to feel like a separate existence, like I was some corporate superhero with a secret identity. By day, I was running a multi-million-dollar architectural consultation business. By night, well, Sunday evenings, I was just Ethan, the disappointing son who worked at a drafting office. The weight of the lie was becoming heavier. Every time Marcus made a snide comment about my career, every time mom apologized to her friends for my modest lifestyle, every time dad suggested I get a real job, there were moments when I almost came clean, like when dad mentioned struggling to pay for his blood pressure medication, and I wanted to tell him I could cover it without even noticing. Or when mom talked about postponing and needed surgery because insurance wouldn't cover it, each time I just quietly arranged for more money to appear in their account. I started seeing a therapist to deal with the mounting stress of my double life. Dr. Martinez became my sounding board, the one person besides Grandpa William who knew the truth about my life. You're enabling their behavior, she would tell me, leaning forward in her chair. Providing them money without boundaries is reinforcing the dynamic. She was right, but I wasn't ready to face the consequences of honesty. I think I always knew it would end dramatically. I just didn't expect it to implode so spectacularly at my gallery opening. It started 3 weeks before the event. Mom called crying about her sciatic nerve pain. She'd been diagnosed with a herniated disc, and the thought of hosting Christmas dinner for 25 guests was overwhelming her. Now, I'd like to tell you, I offered to help purely from goodwill. But honestly, I was tired of pretending her dry ham was edible. Why don't I handle the food this year? I can have it catered. Oh, honey, we can't afford a caterer. Don't worry about the cost. I've been saving. Mom, concerned. You're not taking out a loan, are you? I arranged everything with a high-end catering company I use for business events. They do incredible work, the kind of food that makes you question why you ever bothered cooking yourself. It cost more than my parents thought I earned in 3 months. But whatever. Christmas morning arrived, and I was feeling pretty optimistic. I had my laptop with me because I needed to monitor a major property auction in London. This gorgeous Victorian estate was up for sale, and I had a client interested in consultation if they won the bid. The meal arrived on schedule, and everything was perfectly arranged. Marcus, of course, had to comment. Store-bought stuffing. Really, Ethan? Mom's is so much better. This from the guy who once set off the smoke alarm making instant oatmeal. Mom kept apologizing to everyone for not cooking herself, but you could tell they were enjoying the meal. Marcus shut up after tasting the truffle mashed potatoes, which, by the way, cost more per serving than his weekly grocery budget. Between dinner and dessert, I stepped away to check my laptop. The auction was getting intense, and I needed to be prepared in case my client won. I set up in my old bedroom, which Mom had kept exactly the same since high school. Meanwhile, Marcus's room had undergone 4 renovations. That's when everything went sideways. I had left my consultation software running with several tabs open showing various accounts and current contracts. Marcus came in without knocking. Some things never change. He wanted to borrow my phone charger. He saw my laptop screen. He saw this as his chance to finally expose how pathetic his older brother was. Marcus smirking. Let's show everyone what Ethan's really been up to. Before I could stop him, he grabbed my laptop and walked into the dining room. Picture this: 25 people, including aunts, uncles, cousins, and my parents, stuffed with gourmet food and half drunk on expensive wine they thought was from Costco. Time to see what kind of important work Ethan's doing on Christmas. He flipped the laptop around triumphantly, apparently intending to embarrass me with whatever minor architectural transactions he assumed I was working on. The room went completely silent. Like you could hear the vintage clock I'd gotten Mom for her birthday. She thought it was a reproduction, ticking softly. My screen displayed current account balance, $52 million. Pending consultation contract, $680,000. Recent transaction, $1.4 million. London auction house quarterly profit report, $4.2 million. Marcus's face cycled through 6 different emotions in about 4 seconds. The final one landed somewhere between shock and nausea. He actually swayed slightly on his feet. Marcus whispers, "This can't be real. Marcus, sweetie, what is it?" Marcus voice cracking. He's wealthy, like insanely wealthy. If possible, the silence deepened even further. Then Mom started laughing, like really laughing. Don't be silly. Ethan works at that little drafting office. I stood up carefully, smoothing out my basic cashmere sweater that cost more than their monthly mortgage. Actually, Mom, I own one of the largest architectural consultation companies in the country, have for years. Those drafting office comments, I assess properties worth millions. That little business you never asked about, it has offices in 3 cities. Dad choked on his drink. Uncle Pete dropped his fork. Aunt Linda started coughing violently. Then Mom's laughter transformed into something else. Her face turned red, then purple. She stood up so fast her chair fell over. Mom screaming, "You have millions, and you let us struggle?" Struggle? I send you $8,500 every month. While sitting on millions, your brother has student loans, so there it was. Not congratulations, not, wow, we're so proud, just outraged that I hadn't given them more money. Marcus started crying, surprising, I know, sobbing about how he deserved to know and how I'd betrayed the family. Dad joined in. "Dad, how could you be so selfish? We're your parents. We raised you." That's when I lost it. Years of being overlooked, years of dismissal, years of being treated as the family afterthought. It all came pouring out. Raised me, you shipped me off to Uncle Pete's every time I breathed too loudly. You missed every achievement, every award, every milestone because Marcus might feel overshadowed. You never saved a penny for my college, but took out loans for his private school. And now you're angry that I built something for myself? The next 7 minutes were chaos. Mom screaming about family obligations. Dad yelling about ungrateful children. Marcus alternating between sobbing and demanding to know exactly how much money I had. Meanwhile, the fancy catering team tried to serve dessert while looking extremely uncomfortable. I grabbed my laptop, took my Hermes bag, which Mom had previously complimented as a nice knockoff, and walked out. Behind me, I could hear Mom already discussing how to spend my money. Something about Marcus's MBA and a new Range Rover. As I drove home in my sensible car, a limited edition Audi, my phone started blowing up with text. The family group chat exploded. Marcus started posting on Facebook about hidden family wealth and selfish siblings. The days after Christmas were like watching a tornado hit in slow motion, except the tornado was my family and the debris was my sanity. Within an hour of leaving dinner, my phone had 6-7 missed calls and over 300 texts. Mom followed this fascinating progression. 8:15 p.m., how dare you walk out on family? We need to discuss this like adults. 10:17 p.m., your brother deserves a share of your success. 11:53 p.m., I've already called a real estate agent about houses in better neighborhoods. 1:28 a.m., why aren't you answering? This is your mother. Meanwhile, Marcus had gone full social media warrior. He wrote a massive rant on Facebook about how his millionaire brother had been hoarding wealth while watching his beloved family struggle. The comment section was insane. Distant cousins and former high school classmates I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had strong opinions about my moral character. But this is the part that really got me. Marcus actually posted, all those years of me trying to help Ethan's career, giving him advice about moving up from that little drafting office, and he was secretly wealthy. The betrayal hurt so much. I nearly threw my phone across the room. The only career advice he ever gave me, he suggested I try selling houseplants on Etsy. The flying monkeys arrived next. Aunt Susan, who I see maybe once every 4 years, called to tell me that family is everything. Uncle Bob, who I'm pretty sure still thinks I'm 14, emailed me a lengthy lecture on the importance of sharing wealth. Even my third cousin's husband's sister, how did she get my number? Felt compelled to share her thoughts on family obligation. But the real fun began when they showed up at my workplace. I walked in Monday morning to find Mom, Dad, and Marcus sitting in our reception area. They told Keisha, my receptionist, they had an appointment for consultation services. Marcus clutched his backpack like it contained something actually valuable. The conversation went about as well as you'd expect. We've discussed it as a family discussion without the family member you're discussing, Mom ignoring me. And we think it's only fair that you set up trust funds for everyone. I need at least $3 million to start my new life properly. And your mother and I would like to retire. We're thinking a beach house in Florida. Did you miss the part where I've been sending $8,500 monthly? That's nothing compared to what you have. You owe us. I owe you for what exactly? The years of being ignored? The missed graduations? The constant comparisons? Don't be dramatic, Ethan. We gave you everything. No, I gave myself everything, and you know what? I'm done. Right there in my own office lobby, I took out my phone and canceled the monthly transfers to their account. Mom gasped like I'd struck her. Marcus started his fake crying routine, but quickly stopped when he saw it wasn't working. Then things got ugly. They refused to leave. I had to call security. Watching my 62-year-old mother being escorted out while screaming about ungrateful children was surreal. Keisha asked if I wanted to press charges. I said no, but I did have their names put on the building's do not admit list. The harassment continued for weeks. New phone numbers, fake email addresses, they even tried to reach me through my company's customer service line. I finally had to issue a formal legal notice threatening harassment charges. Mom then played her final card. She called Grandpa William. But here's the thing about Grandpa William. He's smarter than all of them combined. His response? Good for Ethan. About time someone in this family succeeded on their own terms. Mom didn't speak to him for 3 months after that. It's been 8 months since Christmas. I moved to a new house with better security. Changed all my numbers. The company? We're doing better than ever. Turns out my family drama attracted several high-profile clients who respected my discretion in the situation. Marcus continues to post passive-aggressive updates about toxic wealth and family betrayal. From what I hear, he's starting his own architectural consultation business. Good luck with that. Mom and Dad finally stopped trying to contact me when my lawyer sent them an official letter outlining how harassment charges would impact their lives. They're now telling everyone they never wanted my money anyway, and they're praying for my soul. The best part? For the first time in my life, I feel free. No more Sunday dinners full of subtle insults, no more downplaying my achievements to spare their feelings, no more financing the Marcus show. My therapist says I'm finally establishing healthy boundaries. I say I'm finally living authentically. So that's my story. Thanks for letting me share it. Special thanks to the catering company who sent me a card saying the Christmas dinner was the highlight of their year.